So without further ado, time now for everyone's favorite segment of the week. It is time.
It's time.
Yeah, no time for dilly-dallying. Need to get into it. And in fact,
should I?
Ladies and gentlemen,
no.
the moment has arrived to hear from the
No,
man
this is
himself,
like I like to
Ariel
talk.
Helwani.
Was that? I hope that was on air.
Live from the Box
It was.
Studios in
That was
beautiful
not?
New York City.
This is
on the nose.
This is part of the thing. You
And
talk
now,
over the intro.
to
That's what the
answer
pros
your
do.
questions,
Yeah, but try not to
get
say
out of
things
your
like.
seats and on your feet
not
because
dilly-dally.
here he is.
Yeah, no dilly-dallying at the top.
Ariel
You know, usually we talk
Helwani.
about this, we talk about that, the weather. Try not to say things. I still don't know if you're on air or off air. I did not drive myself in, so I got to moderate the questions. I'm acting these days as interim moderator until we figure everything out. So I was able to check out the questions, and there were a litany of great ones. I've got a ton here. I don't know.
What is there to figure out with the moderating?
Yeah.
Well, you know.
Wow.
I mean,
this feels like Frank's being fired right now
No,
from his moderation job.
No, I mean, 2 weeks in a row, I just was like,
Oh, all right.
Wow.
no. Yesterday, I was like, you want to do it? He's like, no, you should do it.
Moderator Helwani.
He said, because you have a heart out, you should probably do it. And in my mind, I was like, what does the heart out have to do with me moderating? But fine, no, it's totally fine.
Why did you ask?
So is this actually? This feels like Frank quitting then.
It felt like he wanted me to relieve him of his duties. Also, this is the dilly dallying that I was referring to.
I see,
You know, like,
yeah.
Here we go, Dilly.
This was actually question number 1 that I would have picked.
Here we go. Adriano's up first. Sorry, me again, he says. And he said this or wrote this at 5:21 a.m. because he wrote another question earlier. See, these are the things that I know when I'm moderating. That's all. Was Gaethje Max the nugget you heard about? So yes, thank you for the hot tag, Adriano. We found out last night not only Jim Miller versus Bobby Green at UFC 300, but we also found out BMF title on the line. Jim Miller, no, not Jim Miller, just kidding. Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway at 155 pounds. And I think the general reaction to this was quite positive. People like this. I feel like this is one of the first fights that was announced for 300 where it was a lot of positivity, or perhaps even unanimous positivity, which I think is interesting. And I have some thoughts. But to answer the question, no, not the rabbit that I heard about. Or nugget, as Adriano said. We move along. Pan. Hey, Ariel and crew. As you are reading this, me and my dog are running 12 miles along the Sacramento River. By the way, he posted this at 1:23 a.m. He's running 12 miles at 1:23 a.m., which I guess in Sacramento is 10:23.
As you're reading this.
Okay, so you think he did it? Oh, maybe he's running right now?
Yeah, you just read it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, maybe
running
he
right
thinks
now.
I'm reading it in real time.
These are where the moderator notes.
Yeah.
You are reading it in real time.
No. When he posted it at 1:23 a.m.
No,
Eastern.
Of course not. No. I think he expected around
Right,
this
fine.
time.
Thanks for the awesome broadcast, boys. Am I the only one who doesn't want to see Justin versus Max? I was in Vegas watching Volk beat Max into a pulp. It was what it was. I love Blessed and have no interest in watching him get leg kicked into oblivion. Justin Gaethje is too big and has already wasted to fan faves like El Kukui and Michael Chandler. Would hate to see this as a downward spiral for Max. Ohana means family. Will somebody please think of the children? Simpsons reference.
I love it.
So I like this question very much because can I be, look, I think I've been, and of course this is going to get spun, but I think I've been very positive towards all the matchups at UFC 300. Can I be the guy who says, I don't actually like this? And I actually don't think it makes sense. And I actually think if we were living in a world where UFC 300 wasn't a thing and wasn't coming up in April and they needed some high-profile names and bangers to put on the card, this fight doesn't happen. If I'm Max Holloway, I've got the featherweight title fight happening in a month. And there's a very good chance Ilia Topuria wins that fight. He's an incredible fighter. Folks coming off a knockout loss. There's a lot going in his favor. Ilia wins. You're getting Ilia versus Max for the featherweight title. So you're that close to recapturing the belt that was once yours for so long. You take this fight, this derails everything. Of course, the last time we saw him fight at 155 produced a great fight, but it was clear to me and the world, and I think Max, because he never stayed, that 155 wasn't his weight class. Okay, both these guys on paper are allergic to boring fights. They have produced time and again for the UFC. They never don't produce, even in losses, they produce. So it's fun, it's exciting, but I have an issue with a guy being that close to the featherweight title and another guy being that close to the lightweight title, Islam Makhachev, saying, this is my next opponent, and both of them taking this fight in April for a fictitious belt. Fun, great, it's all well and good, but the BMF title doesn't mean anything in the end. They are that close to realizing dreams or re-realizing dreams. The timing is suspect. The weight class is suspect. And perhaps like the weirdest thing of all for me is it's a fun sort of dream matchup, but I don't believe this fight happens if 300 wasn't a thing. And that means we're probably getting at least 2, most likely 3. They never do 4 title fights on a card. We've got 1, Zhang Weili versus Yan Xiaonan. This would be the second because it's a 25-minute fight. What's the third? It's either Leon Bilal or they've got something completely different. I don't know. Both of them were right there for the belt, and this derails it. Again, in a vacuum, is it fun? Yes. But from a sort of like sporting championship accomplishment standpoint, makes little sense. Now, I dug around, and what I was told was Max Holloway really wanted to be on UFC 300, and this meant a lot to him. He's been in the UFC for so long. He deserves to be on the card. He's one of the most popular fighters on the card. But to me, this feels like a fight that was thrown together to just say, like, look at this fight that we got, as opposed to a fight that, like, truly made sense. Dustin and Gaethje made sense. Masvidal and Diaz made sense. Those are the previous 2 BMF title fights. Diaz and Pettis made sense. That's when the belt was really created. This one, to me, it doesn't feel like the stars were aligning or needed to align for them to be fighting each other. And so I agree with Pan when he says, yeah, cool, everyone going crazy, but not really what I had in mind. Now, I think at least one of you disagrees with me. I think GC loves this fight, right?
Yeah, love it.
Tell me what. Tell me what.
Wait, I mean, everything you're saying makes sense. Like, yeah, the fight itself doesn't really make sense. It is just for a BMF title. Both of these guys are close to the title in their respective weight classes, the actual title. But the fight itself, you're asking me if I love the fight. I do love the fight. I'm seeing everyone saying that Max's chin is going to get cooked. Until proven otherwise, he has got one of the greatest chins of all time. And like you said, like you began your monologue with, these guys are allergic to boring fights. I just don't see a world where this is not a fun fight. I love that it's 5 rounds. I think it's going to be fireworks, and I think it's a great addition to the card. I get everything you're saying, but the fight itself, I really can't wait for.
I guess it's not up to us to worry about the ramifications and all that, but both these guys were, for all intents and purposes, next. They were next.
Maybe. Like, if Volk wins, is Max getting another title shot?
Okay.
Probably not.
Fair point, but
Gaethje, yes.
Worth waiting that out? I don't know. But maybe
here we go. Here's another positive. You know, I got the BMF shirt on. You know, we love silver around these parts. We got the BMF shirt on. Now we get to hook the BMF title potentially to a title after this. You know, let's say Gaethje wins. He retains the BMF. Then he fights Islam next. Now we got 2 belts on the line in a single fight. Max wins, goes down and fights Elia. Now it's BMF and normal title on the line.
So
we're getting some validity here.
Oh, look at that.
The old BMF title, baby. I mean, you gotta love it when the BMF.
I know.
Silver's on the line. It just amps up the stakes.
100%. And when the BMF is attached to the actual champion, that's a perfect world, because for, I don't know, a century we were told the champion of a weight class is the actual baddest man in that particular weight class.
We're getting that much closer with this fight.
Now we're putting 2 weight classes together, which is a little bit clunky, but that's fine. We were also told by Islam himself that Justin was next. Now, who knows what's going on.
And Justin has also said that he did not want to do this fight. In an interview, he was just like, there's no point in doing that fight. It would be a great fight, but I like Max. It doesn't really make any sense, so I don't really want to do it. So while I do agree with you, it doesn't really make sense. It is just the BMF title. I think the fight itself is going to be incredible.
I just want to repeat, in a vacuum, it's
I'm
fun.
only focusing in the vacuum.
Yeah, and like ultimately someone could say, like, who cares about Max's career aspirations and who cares about Justin's? But I'm just trying to take a step back and be like, every fight on this card so far, to me, makes sense, right? Like Jan was next for Zhang, and Cody and Figgy made sense, and I don't know, Bo is taking the next step, and Jim Miller, like everything made sense, and this one just kind of feels like it was thrown together to pop the crowd. What do you think, Rick?
I love it. I love the fight. I agree with your points about, like, I love the fight, you know, in a vacuum. We can put that off to the side. I think most people will kind of agree on that. I'm not concerned about Max Holloway holding up. In fact, I think right now in this moment, I kind of probably have him winning this fight, although that's subject to change. As far as making sense, we've just spent the last God knows how long with everybody griping and whining and complaining about Max Holloway's here at featherweight knocking off contenders. Now he's not. Now this opens things up. Now the idea of Max Holloway now has options, right? Because everybody's so concerned about the fact that Max is in the way. Look at what happened to Arnold Allen. And if Ilya had fought him, look at what would have happened to him. That's now gone. We don't have to worry about that. And Max Holloway can be getting fights more frequently and fun fights that will eliminate the need for all this concern and having contenders for Volk. Now we'll have Max potentially with options at 55. Let's say Ilia Topuria wins at 45. Max can still potentially go capture that belt. So there's new options and opportunities for Max. It clears way at 45. I'm all for it. The timing of it is very weird. Because as you've laid out, like it would seem that Max could very easily be next and soon, if that were to happen. And it seems like Justin Gaethje would have been next for Islam Makhachev and soon. So the timing of it is a little bit weird. And I do think, obviously, to your point, 300 is the impetus to make this fight, because look at the fan reaction online. And now 300 has one of those fights, at least, where people are like, yeah, this is worthy. This is the one I've been waiting for. So it does make less sense from a timeline and strategy perspective, but from the longer, broader term picture, I'm down. Great fight, opens up options. Let's do it.
I would say it makes more sense in the interim, like right now, as opposed to long term. If I'm looking after Max,
well, for Max,
yes, but here's the thing. Here's the thing. I've seen some people say, well, if Ilya beats Volk, they're just going to run it back. Really? Are they going to run it back? Because what if he gets knocked out? And what if his team says, like, yo, we need to chill now? You know, what if we want to take off? His schedule has been free. There's no guarantee. There's no rematch clause. So Max is ready to go. You want to go to Spain? You want to do something with Ilya? Let's go. Ilya versus Max is a gigantic fight. Again, it's great. Ultimately, this is the most important thing. Who cares what I think? What I was told was Max wanted to fight at 300. And so he's happy. He's not being forced to do this. He wanted this. And maybe there's a part of him now that feels like, you know what? Been there, done that. Let me just have fun fights. 300 is fun. This is fun. Gaethje's fun. 55 is fun. BMF is fun. Let's go. And so I was just like scratching my head a little bit at the timing. But again, I'll repeat, it's obviously fun. It's obviously two of the very best. They don't know how to produce boring fights. I'm just surprised, and maybe even more so for Gaethje, because like he was there.
100%.
He didn't even have to wait.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, he didn't even have to wait for something.
Gaethje's side makes less sense.
Yeah,
Gaethje's side makes less sense.
And maybe this ups the stakes for Oliveira and Arman on the same card, because if Gaethje loses, that guy could be ready to go. A lot of different things, and I guess that's what makes this very fun. There's so many different permutations that come from this.
And Poirier and Benoit, like. The opportunity for Islam is now open, right? Like it seemed like Gaethje was in the driver's seat, and now the opportunity is open. So I think anybody who's a top lightweight contender, there's some real stakes attached to this fight.
Corvette, hey Ariel, with Gaethje defending the BMF title against Max at UFC 300, will we see defenses of the BMF become a regular, recurring thing? I think the BMF is like that thing behind the glass, and it says like break when there's an emergency. I feel like that's the BMF title. Like when they need it, it's a great. When they need a title fight, when they need a fun fight, that's what they break out. So no, I don't think so. Especially if it gets tied to an actual champion. But you know, once a year, I could see it becoming a thing. And it's especially a thing when they need a title fight, like in Utah, like 300. When they need a title fight, it serves its purpose. Wah MMA fan. Hey, Ariel and team. Hope you all doing good. And go Bills. My Raiders are out, so I'm rooting for the Bills. With Max Holloway moving up to 155, do you think if he wins at 300, he stays at lightweight? I kind of think so, yeah. To Rick's point earlier, you know, fresh set of matchups. If Volk wins, of course, on February 17th, then I think it's a lock. If Volk wins on February 17th and Max wins on April 13th, then why go back to 145? You know, there's always going to be someone. Oh, Josh Emmett is there, great. And I heard there was some talk of Josh Emmett, but I think he's a little bit banged up or unavailable. So there's always going to be someone. But here you have a situation where if you beat Gaethje, you just beat arguably the #1 contender. Why would you go back down? You have all these great fights. I mean, Islam versus Max, sign me up. I'll watch that. Hell yeah. So again, I just want to stress, because we talked about it earlier and I was a little bit, you know, negative Nancy. Of course, Justin Gaethje and Max Holloway are fighting right over there on the corner of the street. I'm watching. They're legends. They're greats. They never disappoint. I was just wondering about the timing because Gaethje was so close, because Max was so close, all that. But yeah, if Max wins, huge, 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 because it's a whole new path that has now been created for him at a whole new weight class. Vincent, Patty. Hello, MMA Hour friends. If Jim Miller defeats Bobby Green at 300 and calls it quits, is his retirement going to be better than Lawler's? That's an interesting thing because Lawler was a UFC champion and, you know, he had those runs and those fights with the likes of Rory and Condit and whatnot. He deserves it. And I really strongly feel that he's a Hall of Famer. I know there was that DC comment and people have been debating this. Like I said, Patrick Ewing, my favorite athlete of all time, first ballot. My second favorite athlete of all time, well, I'd say my favorite football player of all time is Thurman Thomas. Hall of Famer, never won a ring, unfortunately. Jim Kelly never won a ring. Andre Reed never won a ring. Charles Oakley didn't win a ring. John Starks didn't win a ring. Wow, all my favorite athletes never won rings. How about that? But, you know, Vladimir Guerrero didn't win a ring. And these are some of the greatest players in their respective sport ever. And yes, it's a bit of Charles Barkley, one of the greatest players ever. Karl Malone, one of the greatest players ever. Never won rings. And so that is, to a degree, somewhat of a knock, but it doesn't take away from the career. It doesn't take away from the accomplishments, from the resume, from the accolades. And so, yes, up until this point, has Jim won a UFC title? No. But right now, he's the leader in wins, tied for most subs. And then the amount of fights is unbelievable. How is that not a Hall of Fame career? It's not just about titles. Guess what? There are people who have won belts who don't have half the career that he won or had and has had and is having. So I think it's a crazy take. He is a Hall of Famer. To have that kind of longevity is one thing, and then to have that kind of success is another. And at his age, doing what he's doing, and then the records, he is a Hall of Famer. Also, if I may, last week I asked a very long question about Conor regarding his last two fights, and I'll try again. As the UFC is part of a publicly traded company, how important is it for them to at least be affiliated with Conor fighting or not? How do you think this will all play out if you'd had to guess? Thanks for the show. It truly lights up my week. Thank you, Vincent. It's a fantastic point. Conor McGregor has 2 fights left on his deal. They want him to fight in June. Interesting. Not April 13th. Okay. Why June? Well, they think 300 is going to sell, perhaps. Don't want to divvy the pie, perhaps. By the way, I wonder if our friends over at the Kingdom are going to say, give us Conor on that June card. We get Tyson, we get AJ, we get Francis. We can't have Conor? Something to follow. But 2 fights left. You're going into a year where you're about to go on the market with your TV deal. You want to be affiliated with Conor McGregor. So this is going to be one of the stories to watch, especially back end of the year and 25. Do they re-sign Conor? Does he walk away? Does he do a deal to go on his own? Does he fight Diaz outside of the UFC on his own? Does he fight in Saudi Arabia? He's the only guy on the roster that could really do this and sell over 1 million buys. And so, yeah, I do think it's important when you're re-upping with Disney, when you're talking to Amazon, when you're talking to Apple, when you're talking to God knows who else, WBD, saying, yeah, we got Conor McGregor for at least a couple of fights. We got him for at least a couple of fights, and you're going to get 1 million+ pay-per-views like that. So, yeah, I do think it's really important. And I do think they're going to try to drag this out a little bit. I really do. And by the way, speaking of something like that, what about those comments from Don Davis regarding Kayla Harrison? Very interesting. And a little bit, you know, Chris Cyborg and I were going back and forth. Chris said that Kayla turned down the fight. Do you see what I mean when I said it wasn't 100% true the way she was positioning it? And then I asked her about Larissa Pacheco, and I know I like Chris very much, but I know it's her husband who runs the account for the most part, and so that's why I addressed it as Ray. I'm just like, come on, you know what you're doing, and I get it, but like, let's not pretend that you're not above this sort of thing. You buy URLs of your opponent, like you buy their name as a URL to troll them. So like you spinning the truth here isn't a crazy thought. You're trying to look good in the eyes of the public, and I get that, but I'm here to tell you the truth. The truth is, I think I'd be curious to hear, I'll say this, I'll be curious to hear if Kayla and her team agrees with everything that Don said about the state of her contract. And if she is in fact injured, then the fight could have never happened. So it's either the contract or the injury. Both would say she didn't turn down the fight. Shane, good afternoon to the boys. With Saudi Arabia having the power to have fight cards moved and the ability to request certain fighters, could we ever have seen, or could we ever see Saudi being the reason we get Jones and Ngannou? Speaking it into existence, hoping Turkey hears this. I mean, did you see when I asked Don about this? You could see the wheels were turning in his eyes and in his brain. It's like, wow, maybe. Look, if he could get Eddie Hearn, I think it's much harder to get Dana White to agree to this than to get Eddie and Frank on board. They're way more open to co-promotion and to sitting at the same table. The hardest thing is going to be getting Dana on board with this. PFL's on board already. The big story to watch is the state of this relationship. The UFC gets site fees. People are clamoring to have them come to their town, to their city, to their country. And they're taking whatever they get. They just want the UFC circus to come to town. This appears to be the first time that a jurisdiction is saying, this isn't good enough. We're paying you top dollar. We're paying you crazy money, reportedly $20 million, to come to our country. We don't want a fight night. We get the best of the best from WWE. We get the best of the best from boxing. We get some of the biggest stars in the world of football and golf. We don't want a fight night. We don't want a regional fight night. We want a pay-per-view. We want the big stars. We want title fights, especially when you're bringing that to Abu Dhabi. So, yeah, this is going to be super interesting. And so they said, no, come back in June. What a story. What a story. So let's see. One of the big stories to watch this year. Ryan, Ariel and crew, hot tag. How about that Saudi card with the sweating emoji? Thanks for all the great content. Yeah, how about it? Now, which one are you talking about? Are you talking about the PFL Bellator one or the UFC one? I feel like the emoji would suggest the UFC one. This is going to be interesting. You know, the UFC isn't used to playing in the same sandbox as others, and they've had to do this at ESPN with the PFL, and they don't like it. They would rather not. This is why they told their friends at BT, don't sign PFL, and BT listened. With ESPN, they didn't have that kind of power. Do you think they want to be playing in the same sandbox as others with Saudi as well? With boxing, with PFL? No. They have never had to do this. Not at Spike, not at Fox, and not the early days at ESPN. And certainly not with arenas and cities and things like that. Not with Vegas. They don't play well with others in Vegas. We know that. As far as MMA is concerned, there's a reason why a lot of promotions have stayed away from Vegas. So this is all a part of being, you know, the leader and the big dog. And you could say all's fair and love and war. But now you have someone who is saying, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want you guys to play nice together, I want that, and I'm going to offer you boatloads of cash. How do they handle that? Dana White, kind of guy, no doubt, that would say, nah, I have my principles, I know what I want, I know what I don't want, you can keep your money. And they're in a position to say no to that. what about all the other people? What about the rest of TKO? What about the other powers that be? So what a story to watch. Floyd, allô les gars, salut. Floyd, your neighbor from Montreal here. Quick one for me. With the announcement of the huge PFL Bellator Champs card yesterday, do you think it is a good move, marketingly speaking, from PFL in Saudi Arabia to make this event on the same day as the UFC Mexico card, the 24th of February? Well, the thing is that main card starts at 10 p.m. Eastern. And so this is going to be over by then. So really, you're going to get like 12 hours of fighting. From the prelims to the main card, 7 fights, to then prelims of Mexico, to main card of Mexico. I don't think there's going to be much of an overlap. And remember, they're both on ESPN Plus. So it's in their best interest not to overlap. So I think it's going to be fine. He then adds in French, Restez tel que vous êtes, ne changez rien, hashtag keep it real, which means stay as you are, don't change a thing. On vous adore, tout avec vous, vos différentes personnalités. We love you all with all your different personalities. Much love, GC, Rick, Mr. Frankie, and you, Thug Nose Ariel. Happy New Year 2024. I appreciate that very much. Merci beaucoup. Blaine, Ariel and crew. With the news of Bellator versus PFL card becoming official, was there ever talks of Francis versus Bader? When does Francis fight for PFL, and will he fight the winner of that fight? Who do you and the crew have winning the Ferreira or Bader fight? I think the Joshua stuff trumped it all, and they were kind of both happening at the same time. So I don't think that ever got serious. And I think Don's response to Francis's future with PFL and Eric Nixick's response, very interesting. I do feel there's a scenario. You see him bring up 2025. I do feel there's a scenario where if he wins this fight, or even if he comes super close, where he fights in boxing end of the year, and maybe this gets delayed a little bit more. So I wouldn't bet the mortgage on Francis in MMA. Do we ever see him in MMA again? I think at least once. But man, this is going so well. Why would you get off this gravy train? Are there any odds out yet for the Bellator? No, this is
a good name for
it.
But,
good name, should we trademark that?
Yeah.
No odds yet.
Nothing, huh? Who would be the favorite in the?
Sheesh, I don't know. I'm gonna leave that to the odds makers to decide.
Which fight do you like the best on that card? And by the way,
pretty excited for Eblen Impa.
Yeah, that's fun.
I think that could be a sick one.
What do you guys think about the card? Like overall, I have to say, did you notice the same thing? I was really blown away by the positivity, because it seems like anything you put out regarding PFL or Bellator over the last couple of years, it's met with ho-hum, or the pay-per-view and the price point becomes part of the story and people are fixating on this stuff. I was blown away by the positivity, and I wondered at the time, this is before the BMF title fight and the Jim Miller fight were announced, I wondered if part of that was like, man, UFC's not giving us what we want for 300, and people love the idea of champion versus champion and promotion versus promotion, and they just were like, I don't know, I just couldn't believe the positivity. I mean, it's a fine card. Is it the great... Does this stack up to 300? No. 300
that
is...
promo video?
The promo video was good.
I mean...
It's a good card. You can argue that it's the best card in PFL and Bellator history. Certainly PFL history. Bellator has had some bangers over the years. But I was just really, really surprised by the positivity, because it just seems like there's so much negativity usually when it comes to the PFL and Bellator. What do you think?
Yeah, I was going to say any non-UFC fight announcements. I mean, yeah, I'm excited for it. I mean, there's a lot of good fights on this card. I mean, Clay Collard, AJ McKee, I feel like is going to be super fun. It's great to see Yoel Romero back. Vadim Nemkov, Bruno Capoloza. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good fights on here. I know Rick's favorite fight.
Tell me, what is my favorite fight?
Oh, yeah.
Clarissa Shields versus Kelsey DeSantis. Your Goat.
Go, baby. Let's go. The return of the Goat.
Yes.
I mean, Aaron Pico, Gabriel Braga. Aaron Pico's an exciting fighter, man.
Aaron Pico being on the prelims is fun. Unfortunately, the Braga family suffered a tragedy with his father passing away recently, so our hearts go out to them. And so I saw some people wondering if he would actually be on this card, but he was announced. So overall, though, Collard McKee, I heard the original idea was Loughnane McKee, but as Don Davis mentioned, Loughnane hurt. Santos Romero is kind of sneaky wild. The Dean
that's a fun one.
moving up to heavyweight. It's not bad.
It is objectively a very high quality card. I mean, you can reference Fight Matrix, as Don Davis, the number one fan of Fight Matrix in the entire world, has. There's a lot of good talent on this card. My problem with it is the same problem I always have, is that this does not need to be on pay-per-view. This needs to be a card that people can watch for free and start to invest in these fighters and care about them, and then down the line become a pay-per-view. That's always my problem with these PFL events that are on pay-per-view, is that this product is not ready for pay-per-view yet, unless you have Francis Ngannou or Jake Paul on top of it. If we're just looking at the card, independent of the business aspect of it, don't care about that, then this is the best you're going to get outside the UFC. That's for damn sure. This is really good stuff. And to Don Davis's point, better than many of the UFC's offerings. So I'm into it. I will be enjoying it. I will be watching it, but I wish more people could.
Yeah, that's why I asked that question, because it seems like that's going to steal some of the buzz or positivity or whatever. But yes, ultimately, it's like the Chiefs Dolphins talk. People are like, why would you put this behind a paywall? Which I thought that was a lot of belly aching, but I understand. I obviously understand.
UFC is offering a free card that night.
Yeah. Later on.
That's gonna be a problem.
Card too.
Yeah, that's gonna be a problem. I still do not get it. But that doesn't change.
He said it had
what's
to be
gonna
that
happen
way
in that arena.
He said it had to be that way.
Okay.
Which is interesting, because he said it has to be behind paywall because it's the most expensive card. But if people don't buy it, you know what I mean? Like our friend Ant Evans, who is Mr. Sunshine and Rainbows on Twitter, that's a joke, predicted 60K. Like, this could be less than 60K. By the way, if you're a combat sports fan, you got Fury Usyk on pay-per-view the previous week. You've got Francis and AJ on March 8th. You've got UFC on March 9th. You've got February 17th, Volk and Taporia. It's and obviously, 300 coming up and all that stuff. Like, it's sandwiched. It's sandwiched between a lot of big shows.
Yes.
That are costing what, like 70 each? Something like that. Sorry, I'm just
No, you're absolutely correct. I mean, it is my frustration with some of these events. I think if more people were able to see the PFL Championship, they'd care more about this card. If more people were able to see this card, then they'd care more about the next one. There's a rush to do this pay-per-view when, look, I'm not inside their walls. I don't know the financials of this. Maybe these pay-per-views are smashing for them. I would be very skeptical. I'd highly doubt that that's the case. But I would, if I was in this growth stage that they're in, you're getting the money for the site fee from Saudi Arabia to put on the card. Make it free. Put this out there for
you just
for
want your
people
product
to
to be seen by the most amount of people as possible.
Right now, yes.
Yeah, right now, when you're trying to break through.
Unless it's Francis or Jake.
Right.
Those are the two exceptions. Proven guys that you can put on top of a pay-per-view and say, you're going to spend money to watch these guys fight.
Hoochie. Hey, MMA Hour fam. Is His Excellency Turki and his pockets deep enough to fund a Francis versus Jones fight? How much would it cost? Who makes the call? I mean, yes, his pockets are, but the question is, we know PFL's in. Does the UFC want to partake? Jamrock. It seems that the questions that make the show for the past 2 months have been layups, and nobody's bringing the heat.
Brian's just getting it today, man.
So here it is. Here's the heat. Let's see if this is heat. If Strickland wins, will you please get him on the show? Or is he also blacklisted the same way Bryce Mitchell is? Strickland is hands down one of the most popular fighters on the roster, whether people like it or not. And it's a shame that he hasn't been on the show before or after the last fight, and especially now against Strickus. Not Nixick, not Curtis. We want Sean. Well, Sean is not banned from the show, even though I think I would be in my, in my rights to feel some sort of way because, he's talking about my wife and all that stuff last time. Again, he says that there are lines and he has his lines and I have my own lines. That being said, I didn't ultimately have any issues, and I thought that our back and forth the last time was fun when you were saying that I'm not the guy who goes to the bar with the boys to watch fighting, and I thought that I kind of put him in his place there, and it was all well and good. And you have to understand, like, that's just Sean, and I think he wants that type of interaction, and it takes a little bit away from him. He likes to be on the front foot so that he doesn't have to be on the back foot to ask or answer certain things. And that's his way of controlling the pace, so to speak, just like a fight. But I've asked through his people for him to come on since the Izzy fight, since even before the Izzy fight, but I don't get much of a response back. I saw him do an interview with Shaquille Majuri, and out of nowhere, he called me a cunt. And he said that, I don't know about trauma. I don't know about this. Sean loves to talk about other people when he knows nothing about other people. And he loves to kind of compare himself and what he's been through to explain why he is different or better than other people. He knows nothing about me, clearly, based on his comments last time. But I sort of understand that's the way he is. And so there's no beef there. I mean, I gave him all those awards. I've been very complimentary of him. The difference between Sean and Bryce, in my opinion, Sean came on and was just kind of playing the character and was going tit for tat. And I kind of, for the most part, like enjoyed the back and forth. I'd prefer if family isn't discussed, but, you know, we've been there before with Connor and Rampage and those guys. I feel like I don't take myself too seriously and can laugh that stuff off. The difference is Bryce tried to hijack the show. Bryce tried to turn the show into some, you know, platform for him to spew propaganda. Come on here and take shots at me is one thing. Come on here and start talking about Vegas being a hoax, Sandy Hook being a hoax. Like, I want nothing to do with that. You came on with an agenda to hijack my show, and you asked me beforehand, is it live? Because you were probably worried that I would edit it, which I would never do, but I don't appreciate that. Come on and tell me when I ask you, hey, I want to talk about this and that, and then we can have a conversation. We can have a conversation about this. But what he did there, I thought, was try to hijack the show and talk about something and stuff that has nothing to do with MMA. That pissed me off. That I felt was a bridge too far. No one's really and honestly, if Bryce, like, Bryce is not banned, I don't need to, like, no one's tuning into my show to hear Bryce Mitchell talk about Vegas and Sandy Hook and sit there with his machine guns. You could get that in other places. But I love to talk about people's lives. Like, look at the conversation with Rose. I love to talk about everything but fighting with some people. I just don't like when you have an agenda to try to use my show to spew what I consider to be nonsense. You want to take shots at me. You want to talk about life. You want to talk about your past. You want to talk about this. The conversation that we had with Sean, the first one that we ever had with him, I thought was one of the best conversations of that particular year because we got to learn about him. And the fact that he was someone who maybe thought about neo-Nazism and stuff like that, like, to me, was not offensive at all. I think people love to call me a snowflake. They love to call me a soy boy, this and that. I'm a lot more like you than you think. It's just I don't try to flex on people. I don't try to be that guy who's Mr. Alpha and force these ideologies and these thoughts down your throat. I don't feel the need to do that. I'm not that insecure. And so there's a lot of things that Sean says that I actually agree with. There's a lot of things that he says that I don't agree with. But I'm actually more interested in having people that I don't have much in common with on the show than people who I do have things in common with, because that to me makes for the most interesting conversation. I talk about this all the time. The moment that I saw Larry King interview Yasser Arafat, a Jew interviewing the head of the PLO, I remember thinking to myself, like, oh, you're not supposed to just interview people who are like you. That's what makes a good interviewer. So there's no ban on Sean. Bryce and I have texted afterwards, and he's not banned. It's just, I don't know if I trust that he's going to come on and just stick to, you know, this lane right here. And I feel like on this show, the lane is pretty darn big, but like that was just a little bit too much. So I guess Sean doesn't like me for whatever reason. I guess he doesn't think I'm hard. I guess he doesn't think I'm tough. I guess he doesn't think that I like to, you know, shoot guns and talk about stuff like that. I would say that he needs to, you know, he needs to assume a little less. He's right about the guns thing. He's right about that. I don't go out and shoot guns. But I also do think we have a lot more in common than he may think, believe it or not. But in any event, he thinks I'm a cunt, and that's fine. It's probably because of the 10-7. You know, he didn't think I went to the boys, the bar. Been doing it since he was in his father's nutsack. I mean, it's hard to come back from that. So I get it. I get it. Jordan, with a win on Saturday, what percentage chance would you give to Arnold Allen fighting for the featherweight title next? Well, if Max is gone, a pretty big chance. He might be the happiest guy in the division. What's up, Ariel? With the UFC coming to Toronto for the first time since 2018, will you be there? I will not be there. I'm going to Puerto Rico later today for the Amanda Serrano, Jake Paul press conference, and then I'm going somewhere else. And there was actually some talk of me going to Toronto, believe it or not, but then all this other stuff came up and a family thing came up. So unfortunately, I will not be there. And I know a lot of people like to talk about why I don't go to the UFC events, and they think they know the reason. I'll just say one day I'll tell you why. There are specific reasons why, and they are my own reasons, no one else's reasons. And it's part of a promise that I made to myself after I left ESPN. But now's not the time with just a few minutes left on the show. But I'll one day we'll have story time, and I'll shoot from the hip and from the heart and explain to you all why. But not today, and no Toronto for me. But this gentleman asks, what's my true opinion of Toronto? And I love Toronto. I don't hold any hostility or grudge towards Toronto. I know Montreal and Toronto have a rivalry, but I like Toronto.
Danny's Pizza.
Danny's Pizza. Beautiful place. He also says, RIP to my Steelers. Josh Allen is a beast, and you can't make mistakes against your Bills. Good luck versus the Chiefs. Thank you, my friend. Question for Ariel and the crew. Where's the most ridiculous out-of-pocket place you've ever attempted to watch a live sporting event on your phone? I feel like GC has to be the guy to answer this. Most ridiculous out-of-pocket place you've ever attempted to watch a live sports event on your phone?
I mean, just this past summer, I was, as we were waiting for the wedding ceremony to start, I was streaming UFC London. That was
from the seats?
Yeah, and this was actually a no-phone ceremony. Like, you were not allowed to have your phones out at all. So I was the only one there with it, you know, obviously on silent, trying to sneak it in. Rode it all the way up until the bride made the walk down the aisle, and then I had to put it away. Almost missed the main event with Tom Aspinall, but yeah, there's been a lot of places. Subways, I mean, every single restaurant you could imagine, bars, airports. Shout out to the ESPN Plus app. All you need is the internet, and you can be watching UFC.
Oh, yeah. Marty, given Bam Bam and Steve-O have been on, have you ever had any thoughts about bringing on Kyle from the Nelk Boys? Shout out to Kyle, fellow Canadian. I don't know them well. I saw him say some nice things. Haven't thought about it much, but wouldn't be against it. Not a hater. Actually, quite impressed and blown away by what they built. So certainly would be open to it, and think it would be a fun conversation. He also adds, additionally, Ali Abdelaziz has said he is letting go of all beefs. Wow. And going to be nicer to everyone. Have we tried to reach out or book dominance fighters? I didn't know that, and no one has reached out to me, and something tells me I don't apply for whatever reason, because he has this fictitious beef with me that he needs to keep up in order to, in order to be in the good graces of his boss. So I don't think that's happening, but I would welcome it. It would be nice. Like I said, no beefs here. It's a no beef zone, and everyone's welcome. We only have one life. We don't need that that kind of cancer in our body. Hello, Ariel. A short one this week. What did DP, this is from Max83 from Germany, what did he show you on his phone in the somewhat viral meme? Well, I've been asked this question quite a bit. I was on a show recently, the Overdogs podcast, and they asked me about this. Our guy, Mac Malley, asked me about this. I hate to tell you guys, there is no story behind this. He didn't actually show me anything. This clip that has gone viral is a edited clip. He was showing me something on his phone, and then they took that part, and then they took a part of him saying like, oh, not that, and they put it together, and then they zoomed in on my face. None of this actually happened. This is all something that was just kind of concocted. So there was no, I don't know. I think people are thinking that I saw something that was personal or salacious or whatever. None of that happened. It's not real. It's something made up from the internet. I'm sorry to break the news. It's just not a good story. Okay, a couple more. Trin, I went to a Puerto Rican restaurant in Phoenix for the first time and had an absolutely fantastic experience. The chicken was melt in your mouth tender. The empanadas were packed with unique flavors, and the plantain desserts were heavenly, yet not too sweet. With your trip to PR today, what's going in your belly while in our favorite U.S. Commonwealth? I don't know. I'll let you know, but that was a great little primer right there. Thank you, Trin. I hope to try it all. That would be nice. Mark, what's the crack, Ariel? First time asking a Q. How would you define your professional relationship with Jon Jones? I sometimes feel like you go a little hard on him. Yes, you give him his flowers, and you used to be boys. I just feel like there's some tension. Happy to hear your thoughts. No real tension. I feel like he doesn't like me. I think that stems from when he got arrested right at the beginning of the pandemic. I was on The Daily with Pablo Torre, and I said something about, I think, saying that, like, he's the greatest of all time if everything is included, but if you have to exclude people who have tested positive for PD, he can't be the GOAT, something like that. And he didn't like that. And he tweeted something like, you know, the difference between me and you is that I'll be remembered forever and no one is going to remember you. And I was like, damn, that's pretty harsh. But so that gave me some insight into how he feels about me, or that comment. I've talked to him once or twice since on Instagram, but then the thing with Francis, and he called me all kinds of names. So I don't know. I think over the years we've had like a up and down relationship, obviously big moments. And then, you know, there are moments where he didn't speak to me. I'll never forget when we did the walk and talk in Albuquerque in 2015. I've said this, one of the worst experiences of my career, because his team tried to get us to not post the interview or edit the interview. And I had to shut off my phone for 24 hours and just say, I'm posting this whether you like it or not, because I actually think it was a great interview. And then afterwards they apologized and said, yeah, you were right. So you have to deal with a lot. But no, I mean, he's incredible, and he's given us great interviews and great access. And, you know, Jon has told me a lot of things over the years that I wouldn't ever dare say, because you're told something in confidence, you're told something in private, you don't talk about it. So I think I've been very respectful and honest and professional towards him. And so, you know, that's really the best that I can do, and just try to be honest about the trials and tribulations. I mean, he's certainly given us a lot to talk about over the years, and I don't think I've ever hit him below the belt or been unfair or kicked him while he's down. So I think we'll be okay. Impossible not to respect what he's done, impossible not to respect what he's accomplished. And I don't know if there's more to the story on his end, but, you know, you sit here long enough, you're going to say a lot of things. And I feel like, considering he's been in our sport for so long and there's been ups and downs, I feel like I've been pretty fair and pretty, you know, pretty respectful and professional and pretty honest when it comes to his career, and have said a lot of great things about him. Aussie, good day, Ariel. Big love from Australia. Question for you and the boys: when you eat out, do you pick sparkling or still water? I used to be a big sparkling guy, now a still guy. What about you guys?
Massive sparkling guy. Love sparkling water.
Frank?
Still.
I like still, but if I'm feeling fancy, sparkling.
Okay. Yeah, I like still. It's just a little too bubbly for my liking. Thanks for watching. We appreciate it very much. Hey, if you like this video, give us the old thumbs up. Subscribe as well. You could get many more of these videos on the channel, so please do that. We would love you forever if you did so.